Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Celia Ceramics where we make pottery and clay dolls. So last week we worked on finishing the unicorn doll. There she is in all her glory. So after finishing her up, I realized that I can mix some of the felt together to make more of a custom colored doll, and I really want to do that again. So I'm thinking I'm gonna make a Neapolitan colored cat. There's been this trend going around of girls dyeing their hair like Neapolitan ice cream, so they'll do the chocolate, strawberry, and vanilla, and I thought it was so cute, especially on curly hair. I want to form the fur kind of like a calico cat, where she's mainly white and then I sprinkle in the chocolate and I sprinkle in the pink. This design is just going to be more open. I want to play around with the fur, I want to play around with the color, so I can't really talk too much about what she's going to look like, but we're both going to be surprised in the end. Anyway, let's just get right into it. Okay, so I'm just going to start by conditioning the clay. I just run the polymer clay through the pasta maker so it's easier to sculpt with, easier to work with overall. And then we just dive right into sculpting. So I sculpt on chopsticks because I feel like it's easier to get a really good sized neck without so much work. And then I wrap some tinfoil around that bad boy to make the head. I like to start with a foil base, that way the doll head doesn't end up being too heavy. Using too much polymer clay can make the whole doll just really heavy to hold once it bakes. And then I like to kind of put in the eyes to see how far apart I want them to be. I usually use my hands or my fingers as measuring tools. I like to measure with my fingers just to make sure that all the dolls come out similarly. It is going to be a line after all, and I don't want them all to come out with different shaped cheeks or different face shapes. My fiance and I went thrifting the other day, and I was reminded that I took a ton of inspiration from the old school strawberry shortcake illustrations. I really love the oval face shape with the big chubby cheeks. If I could get away with giving my dolls freckles, I totally would. I also took some inspiration from that old school TV show called Starbright, that old cartoon. I know it wasn't my generation, but it was my mom's, and it was one of her favorite shows growing up. I feel like the oval face and the chubby cheeks was just really big in the early 2000s or the 90s. Even Cabbage Patch Kids, I realize there's just a similar style going around in that time frame. And once I'm happy with the placement of the eyes, I just switch over to adding the chubby cheeks. I will go in and clean this up later, but I kind of just want a general understanding of the face shape and where the nose placement is going to be. The one thing that tends to change a lot is the nose shape, because I feel like the nose can change the character by a lot. The nose and the ears. So sometimes my noses are bigger and wider, and sometimes the noses are a little bit smaller and skinnier. It kind of depends on what the vibe of the doll is turning out to be. And then I just put in the mouth like you see me doing here. I won't affirm it, like I won't really decide what the expression is going to be until the very end, once I pop those eyes in. And once I have the doll's face all figured out, I move on to popping in the actual eyes. So I'll rip out the other ones and put in the official ones. I really wanted to go with a brown theme for these guys. It's kind of hard to tell because the eyes look a little red here, but they're kind of like a reddish brown, which you'll see a little bit later. Like I said, I wasn't really sure where I was going with this doll and decided I did want to lean into the cat theme, so I gave her those ears and I gave her some cute little sharp teeth because it kind of reminded me of Cat Bus a little bit with his like toothy, creepy grin. You can tell that at some point I was debating on whether or not I was going to give this doll a cat nose and really dig into that cat theme, but I decided against it. I just don't think it fit her in the end, but I kept the sharp teeth because they were just really cute. And like I said, Cat Bus is one of my favorite characters. Now, I didn't get a ton of the sculpting of the hands or the feet, and that's because I don't have as much experience in sculpting human hands. I've done a lot of animal plushes, but really not that many of the human-esque ones. Like I said, I'm still figuring all these dolls out. So it's easy for me to start them and kind of show you guys where I begin, but once I get into the detailed adding the fingers and adding the thumbs, because the design is somewhere in between human and a monster, I have to really focus to do that. Especially the feet. I've never done human feet before. This is my first time, and I wanted them to be chubby and kind of baby-like, and it was just kind of complicated for me. I wasn't able to record the process this time. If they look a little funky, don't worry. It'll all come together in the end once they get painted. And then it's time to bake. We just throw that bad boy in the oven. So really, I just follow the packaging for this part. I do the 275 degrees for 15 minutes. Usually I'll go a little bit over because I feel like the paint takes better if I put it in for 20 instead, like you see me doing here. And then I just bake it all in a bed of cornstarch just to keep the integrity of the piece so the back of the head doesn't get flat or the hands or the feet. And there I am. As you can tell, I'm very excited because I really like to put the hair into the doll head. I feel like it helps me figure out what the rest of the doll is going to look like. Once I have all the hair in, I know how to paint it. I can really see the end result of everything before I've done it. I think something that surprised me when I started making these dolls is how creepy or kind of ugly they look before I paint them or before I put the hair in. It's just such a big makeover moment. But this is just me needle felting in the hair. As I said before, originally I wanted this to be a Neapolitan cat, but once I started putting her together, I didn't really love the design. It looked cool, but it didn't look like it fit her. Not only that, but the last 2 dolls that I've made have had some kind of pink in it, and I want to be able to put them all together and have them be their own things. They need to be different. And I want to make sure that I'm experimenting so that I keep adding variety to the dolls. So I decided white and brown, keep it simple, keep it natural. And in the end, we went for more of a just chocolate and vanilla theme instead of a Neapolitan ice cream theme. Since the last 2 dolls that I made were very vibrant, very pastel or poppy, I wanted one that was in more neutral colors, more browns, more whites, not so overwhelming. Even though, don't get me wrong, I really like that style of art, I feel like I need contrast in my life. I need there to be some variation between each one. Now, when I dove into her haircut, I wanted to give her kind of a longer fro. I originally wanted to play with braids or maybe curling the hair, but I feel like this doll really fits that fro look, more than the other ones have even. So I wanted her to have a fro, but I wanted to keep it long and fluffy, as long as I possibly could without it messing with the anatomy, like it just can't get in the way of the skeleton when I have to put it in. I wanted to make sure when I was doing her haircut that I really emulated that look of highlights, but I feel like she ended up kind of looking like Storm from X-Men. But it's still a vibe, I still like it. It looks a lot more like the ice cream than I planned, but all in all, she's cute and fluffy and kind of looks like a lion. I'm gonna try and keep her hair this long, but we'll see as the process goes if I can really commit to keeping it like that without it messing up the flexibility or the body once I input it. Now, one of the reasons why I kind of steered away from the Neapolitan ice cream idea is because I couldn't figure out what the skin tone would be. I could have done a split effect, or I could have made her pink. It just felt difficult to not make her look like the other dolls I've made, so I had to steer into the brown, so that way I could give her a really cute cocoa colored skin tone. So when I went into painting her, I decided I wanted her to be more of a natural color. I mixed together a brown and then I swatched it on my own hand so that it would be kind of similar to my skin color, but maybe a shade or 2 darker. Now this ended up being more difficult than I thought because I just wanted to keep the skin tone warm. Her eyes are warm, she has some warm brown in her hair, the skin needed to match that in order for it to all come together right. If it was too cool, then it would just look odd and she would seem mismatched with the rest of her. I wanted to keep those eyebrows matching the color in her hair, so I did those just a deep brown. And then I just did her lips the same color, gave her a little bit of lipstick that was still really close to the color of the rest of her face and the inside of her ears. When I did her tongue, I tried really hard to match it to the color of her eyes, but it was just kind of difficult. It came out a little bit darker, but I still think it all tied together. I feel like her eyes look super red when I look at them here in the camera, but they're definitely brown, I assure you. They're just a really red toned brown. And then I just did the same thing for the rest of the limbs. I did her hands the same color of her face, and then the feet the same color as her face, and just a basic white on the claws. I didn't want to do too much until I saw her all put together, because I'm worried that maybe some of the shading won't come out right. I do think I'm going to try and make more dolls with natural skin tones like this. Since I ended up giving her that toothy grin, I wanted to incorporate some claws into the design. Just to stick with the cat theme, she has the ears, she has the teeth, she needed some claws, but her hands ended up being kind of chubby. I mixed them between a human hand and more of a cat paw. The more I look at her hands, the more it looks like something from Where the Wild Things Are. I dig it. It's a little different than maybe what I was trying to do, but I think it came out pretty cute. I've been kind of in the middle trying to figure out if I want the dolls to lean more human or lean more monster or like the animal that I decide to combine them with. I think it's always easier to want to revert back to whatever is easier, so I think I typically want to make the feet or the hands whatever animal it is that I'm trying to combine them with or whatever combination instead of doing the hands and the feet in a human way. So this is my attempt at really pushing myself to go out of my comfort zone. I don't want to get stuck with things that are just familiar, because then I'll never grow. Like, yeah, you have to grow your sculpting skill just as a painter has to keep painting to improve their skill. I feel like I have a lot of my style down, but I still have to work on some of the anatomy stuff. Because honestly, the first ones just always come out like trash, but they do get better over time. And this is how she came out once all her paint was done. Now, she came out so much better than I expected. Near the end of painting her, I started thinking of the movie Atlantis and decided I wanted to do some kind of tribal face paint. I'm also actually part Islander, and I think I kind of tied some of that in there when I was thinking of the tattoos. A lot of my artwork used to contain these swirls. It was actually on the mascot that I'd originally created, so I wanted to add that to her cheeks. Then I just put all the pieces together. Like I said, I'll probably never do the adhesive on camera. Now, we still have to do some sanding to the pelvis and the shoulder area, so I'm gonna finish her up in part 2. Also, defaulting just takes forever, so stick around to see the end result. Anyway, that's all. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.